Hi, thanks for joining me today. My name is Josh, and I'll be your teacher. Do you want to know more about weed? Well, if you do, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the High Class, an educational series that was designed to help you get the most out of your marijuana experience. Welcome to my Learning Corner. Today's lesson is an introduction to cannabis. If you're brand new to marijuana, it's a great place to start. And if you're not, it's also a great place to start. However, before we get started, let me tell you a little bit more about myself and why I decided to start teaching this class. See, I've spent well over a decade working in the medical field. I have my master's degree in nursing, and I've treated patients in nearly every setting, from traumatic injuries like gunshot wounds to de-escalating psychotic patients. Heck, I even spent a couple of years in management. I'm also a medical marijuana patient myself. So my passion for marijuana, as well as my clinical experience and formal education, put me in a unique position to teach this course. So, without further ado, what is marijuana? Put simply, it's a culturally accepted slang term for the cannabis plant. Cannabis is a plant that produces two main species, Cannabis indica and Cannabis sativa. It has other species, but you can't buy those at a dispensary, so we're not going to talk about them. Cannabis produces a pungent flower that has intoxicating effects. For centuries, all around the world, the marijuana flower has been used medicinally and recreationally. These days, there's a variety of options available to patients, everything from inhalation to topical application. All you really need is a state-issued ID, a prescription from a doctor, and a local dispensary, and you are well on your way to consuming marijuana at home. But marijuana treats a variety of ailments. So how does the patient know what to choose? The short answer, typically, is that they don't. By the end of this course, you should be able to know exactly what type of strains and applications to use to best treat whatever you're looking for relief from. So let's talk about this. The two most popular species of cannabis, Cannabis indica and Cannabis sativa. These two species make hundreds of subspecies, or what we call strains. They all have different effects. For example, indica-dominant strains tend to have a heavy high. They're used for pain relief, reduction of inflammation, or helping you sleep. Sativa-dominant strains are known for having heady, euphoric, uplifting effects. The best way to find out about each different bud that's available to you is to ask your med tender. So, why do I keep saying indica-dominant or sativa-dominant strains? Does anybody know? Correct. That's because there are no pure strains anymore. Indica and sativa are the species, and the strains are the subspecies, and there's hundreds, if not thousands of them. Side note, did you know that there is no governing body that regulates the naming of different strains? Do what you will with that information. Okay. The idea of there being a pure indica or a pure sativa is actually a misconception. In 2018, the National Institute of Health said very plainly, ubiquitous interbreeding and hybridization of sativa and indica has rendered their distinctions almost meaningless. So what does that mean? It means you can't find a pure sativa or a pure indica strain. However, the classifications of either indica dominant or sativa dominant or hybrid really are there to help guide the patient's choices. So let's talk about cannabis. Cannabis produces a compound that is psychoactive. It also produces another compound that isn't psychoactive. These compounds are THC and CBD. Both of these compounds exist in an inert state in the plant in its raw form, which means that if you just take the plant and you eat it, you're not going to get high. The THC in the plant is inactive. THCA is not psychoactive. In order to activate either the CBD or the THC from THCA or CBDA to THC or CBD, you need a process called decarboxylation, or adding heat. Traditionally, if you smoke it or cook it, you are decarboxylating it. And that activates the raw plant form and creates the psychoactive effects that most people are looking for. All right, so marijuana has over 400 different secondary metabolites. THC and CBD are simply the most abundant. These secondary metabolites are typically found in the plant's trichomes. The trichomes are those little sticky crystals that are found on the exterior of the flower, the nugget. Really, really dense trichomes make those snow-covered buds. These secondary metabolites, THC and CBD, are called cannabinoids. Specifically because they come from a plant, they're called phytocannabinoids. And they act on a system that exists in all mammals called the endogenous cannabinoid system, or the ECS for short. The ECS is made up of two different types of cell receptors, Cb1 receptors and Cb2 receptors. These receptors are found all over the body. The Cb1 receptors are found in the brain and the nervous system. Cb2 receptors can be found everywhere else in the body in all of your major systems attached to your white blood cells. They both regulate different things. For example, Cb1 receptors regulate the timing and release of certain neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. This is how marijuana can help to treat things like anxiety or depression. On the other hand, by activating these regulatory systems in the body, these Cb2 receptors that are on your white blood cells, they help to regulate things like the immune response or the inflammatory response. This is the way that medical marijuana can help to decrease inflammation, reduce pain. Because of the ECS, or endogenous cannabinoid system, marijuana is able to stimulate certain regulatory processes within the human body that have a measured effect and are medicinally significant. That's a lot of information, so why don't we just stop for a second and review. The psychoactive compound THC is a cannabinoid, which is a compound that acts on the endogenous cannabinoid system, or the ECS for short. The stimulation of regulatory responses that THC causes within the ECS are the reasons why its use is medicinally significant. Pretty cool plant, right? The marijuana plant produces over 400 different secondary metabolites. The trichomes of the marijuana plant contain these secondary metabolites called terpenoids. This cornucopia of terpenoids and flavonoids are what give the cannabis plant and the flower its pungent smell. These secondary metabolites are one of the reasons that this plant can be used in so many different ways. Unfortunately, for patients seeking specific outcomes, there's not a lot of available information on the specific strains, cannabinoid and terpenoid profiles, so they tend to just go to the dispensaries looking for whatever flower has the highest possible THC content, and that's not necessarily going to give them the relief that they're seeking. It is, However, entirely possible to match specific strains to patients' specific needs. Really, there are cultural understandings that are built around the term indica and sativa, but these distinctions are really nothing more than broad generalizations. Sativa, up; indica, down. However, because of the knowledge we're gaining about terpenoids and the secondary metabolites and how they work together with THC to provide specific outcomes, very distinct and different treatment options can be available in the future. I personally believe that patients should be able to see not just the THC percentages that are available in each strain, but also their distinct terpenoid profiles. In an interview, Dr. Russo said, and I quote, "The difference in observed effects in cannabis are due to the terpenoid content, which is rarely reported to the potential customers." He goes on to explain, sedation in most cannabis strains is attributed to their myrcene content. And in contrast, high levels of limonene will be the cause for the uplifting feeling or mood, end quote. Both myrcene and limonene are terpenoids, and we're going to explore more about that in later lessons, but it is important to start to understand terpenoids at an introductory level. So I think that's enough for today. Thanks for joining me on the High Class. See you guys next time.